Good afternoon from Tokyo, where the Asian Development Bank Institute is based. My name is Agnes Suri, and I'm the Deputy Head of the Capacity Building and Training Department at ADBI. ADBI is the think tank of the Asian Development Bank, and we organize many capacity building events on diverse topics supporting sustainable development. Welcome to this two-day online training workshop organized with the Asian Development Bank and the International Financial Reporting Standard Foundation on the adoption of the ISSB standards for climate-related information disclosure. To start this online training, I'm delighted to introduce Byung-Sik Jung, Deputy Dean of the ADBI, so that he can share his opening remarks. Deputy Dean, over to you.
Thank you, Agnes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Capacity Building Workshop on adoption of the ISSB standards for climate-related information disclosure, part of the...
Deputy Dean, you are muted, I think. No.
No, it's not on.
Sorry for that.
Do you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Welcome again. Welcome to the Capacity Building Workshop on adoption of the ISSB standards for climate-related information disclosure, part of the ADBI and ADB Asian Climate Finance Dialogue Project. Thank you to the International Financing Reporting Standards IFRS Foundation, Komori-san and Shibasaka-san, based out of Tokyo, and Aurora, who have put this together with other experts from IFRS, Taeyong, Jonathan, and Jialin. I would also like to thank Director General Bruno Karasako of ADB, Yolando Lemon Fernandez, and Junkyu Lee, and my team at ADBI, Agnes Suri, Professor Sayuri Shirai, Direct Hondo, and Aya Nitono. The ADBI Asian Climate Finance Dialogue Project was jointly launched by ADBI and ADB in November 2023. And since then, 4 high-level policy dialogue roundtables and 2 capacity building workshops, such as this one, have been organized. I won't go into too much detail, as Agnes, the Deputy Head of ADBI's Capacity Building and Training Department, and one of the leaders of the project will do so in a few minutes. By joining this online workshop, I hope it is safe for me to assume that you have already heard of the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB standards, in some capacity, which are focused on climate-related information disclosures and the most comprehensive and globally accepted instrument to guide the design of regulatory frameworks to support sustainability-related disclosure standards, which this workshop aims to take a deep dive into and build understanding on. Asia generated about half of global greenhouse gas emission in 2021, driven by rising domestic consumption, energy demand, and production. Given this high economic and population growth and a growing manufacturing base, meeting the growing energy demands and transitioning from coal-fired power plants to renewable energy sources pose significant challenges for the region's economies. This energy transition to meet the 2030 GSG emission reduction targets and achieve net zero emission by 2050 requires substantial investment in clean energy, more sustainable infrastructures, and lower carbon technologies. While the region's financing needs are huge, private and public flows are insufficient. Multilateral governments, banks such as ADB, and international donors play a key role in unlocking financing for climate actions. Governments are also key, but the fiscal space is limited. As a consequence, it is also critical to tap into private investors for bridging the financing gaps, supporting capacity building, and facilitating technology transfers. Coordinated efforts across the borders, sectors, and stakeholders will be essential to meet the net zero targets to support more sustainable developments across Asia and the Pacific. Investors need to be able to discern climate virtuous corporations and understand the opportunities so they can direct their investments where they would be the most impactful to respond to climate change and build a path toward carbon neutrality. Corporates and financial institutions need also to analyze their business and climate-related risks they are facing to be more resilient. This requires high-quality climate-related information disclosure practices. To support this process, governments will need to implement supportive policies, strengthen regulatory frameworks, and encourage green financing mechanisms to attract investments at the necessary scale. Over the next 2 days, this webinar will provide background information on sustainable finance, climate disclosure, the GHG protocols, net and gross emission reduction targets, and existing standards. Sessions will also take a deep dive into the IFRS S1 and S2 requirements, adoption of the ISSB standards, and how to develop a roadmap for adoption, including establishing the regulatory process, defining the reporting entities and specific requirements. It is our hope that this will help you and your government to scale up climate finance and ensure financial stability. I wish you a successful event. Thank you. Over to you, Agnes.
Thank you very much. Now I'm happy to give the floor to Hiroshi Komori, member of the International and Sustainability Standards Board, for his opening remarks. Komori-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Hello, everyone. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Jun, Agnes, and Professor Shirai for your exceptional leadership in organizing the event, and to the entire ADBI team for great hard work behind the scenes. I also extend my thanks to all the members and partners today we have taken to participate in today's webinar. We have an informative 2-day program prepared for you. Today, from my colleague Taeyang and myself, respectively explain about S1 and S2, and we will provide a comprehensive overview of our standards. And tomorrow, we will shift our focus onto implementation, exploring how these standards can be effectively adopted within your jurisdictional frameworks. Our team will discuss various jurisdictional approaches to adoption, introduce our jurisdictional roadmap development tool, and offer practical implementation guidance. As you may be aware, the IFAS Foundation developed the ISSB standards in response to calls from global policymakers, including the G7, FSB, and IOSCO, to address the fragmentation in sustainability reporting. To meet this need, the Foundation established the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, to develop the IFAS Sustainability Disclosure Standards with our first 2 standards released in June 2023. I'm delighted to share the fact that 35 jurisdictions around the world have already begun incorporating ISSB standards into their regulatory frameworks. This growing momentum demonstrates widespread recognition that comparable and consistent sustainability information is fundamental to efficient capital markets. So your participation is invaluable to us, and we look forward to engaging with your questions and insights later today throughout this series. By collaborating effectively, we can build a more sustainable and transparent global financial system that benefits companies worldwide. Thank you again, and I now return to you, Agnes. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Komori-san. As explained by Deputy Dean Jung, this online training is part of an ADBI ADB long-term project, which is entitled the Asian Climate Finance Dialogue, which it's a platform to promote policy actions by governments, financial regulators, and central banks to facilitate the understanding of climate-related information disclosures and to scale up climate finance. So we have a web page you can easily access with a lot of resources, such as working papers, a policy brief on many topics, such as disclosure standards, GHG emission tracking, emission reduction targets, carbon credits, taxonomy, and so on. It also includes data on financial regulators and supervisors' practices to develop frameworks supporting climate disclosure and gradually scale up sustainability finance. These data sets come from financial regulators and central banks, which are surveyed as part of the project. Now, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Sayuri Shirai for session 2. Professor Shirai is advisor for sustainable policies at ADBI, and she will deliver a presentation about the objectives of standardized disclosure. Professor Shirai, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm Sayuri Shirai, and I'd like to briefly explain to you why this disclosure standard is very important. And I also like to share with you some of the survey result, the survey we conducted to 12 jurisdiction financial regulators. Okay, so I guess everybody know in Asia, when we look at GHG emissions, total amount, it's still growing. And so left-hand side, it covers Central Asia, East Asia, South Asia. So we really have to find a way to contain this emission. Right-hand side, you know, this is a global GHG emission. So starting with PRC, also in Asia, India, Japan, our GHG emission account for quite a large share of global GHG emissions. One of the reasons why our GHG emission is so large in Asia is because Asia depends quite a lot on coal power plants. So this is, for example, the data on the share of coal-fired electricity, and starting with India, PRC, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. So we are quite depending on coal-fired electricity. So because emission from coal-fired electricity is very substantial, so how to reduce emission, through corporate sector's business reform, and also developing financial market is essential. So how to reduce GHG emission in Asia? From the government point of view, we need two types of policy. So one is a green physical policy and green industrial policy. So this is typically related to carbon pricing, carbon tax, emission trading system, and also emission control regulation, some taxation, subsidy, and to promote renewable energy and the public investment is important. But at the same time, we have to pay attention to the financial market because those regulation and fiscal and industrial policy, they try to change the behavior of corporate sectors. And the corporate sector needs to put a lot of money to invest in the capital spending, investment, fixed investment. And so we need financial market based on private sector and to support those corporate sectors decarbonization effort. So how to promote financial market? To me, most important the policy is disclosure. So government, financial regulator needs to seriously consider the importance of information disclosure, because without the disclosure, it's very difficult for the investors to know to which company they should invest to promote decarbonization. So disclosure is most important element of the policies to develop financial market. Taxonomy and how to promote investor base, issuer base, how to prevent greenwashing are also equally important measures. But I think disclosure is the first step we need to deal with. So let's look at the corporate sector's financing approaches. For the companies to get the finance, there are 3 ways to get finance. One is the capital market, which is usually comprised of stock and bond. And the second one is a banking system. And the third one is a direct investment to the carbon project. In the most of the cases, it takes the form of blended finance. So private and public sector blended finance is a typical measures. Capital market is very important. Every country have a stock market and bond market. And so how to allocate the funding from capital market into green and decarbonization activity is important. If we can have an information and a legal structure, we can encourage investors to gradually adjust their portfolios over time. We can also encourage the investors to take an engagement directly with the companies and then discuss about how to reduce GHG emission. Sometimes shareholders can exercise voting rights to transform corporate sector's behavior. Also, stock market, once we have sufficient data, the asset management companies can create various index, which is comprised of green index or like transition index. So we need really data to classify how to classify certain index. So in any case, to develop capital market, we need standardized disclosure and information. The banking system is usually a bit different from capital market because commercial bank tends to keep their lending information privately. So usually it's very different. However, under the ISSB, large banks listed on stock exchange, they are also required to disclose their information, including the information about financed emission coming from their lending and investment behaviors. So now banks, large banks, disclosure is incorporated into the ISSB standard. So banks also start to disclose it. And then they can also support corporate sector's decarbonization behavior through changing their loan portfolio and also lending condition. And the bank can also exercise engagement with finance company. Okay, so now let's quickly look at the climate-related information disclosure. So just to repeat why information disclosure is so important. The most important thing is company have to know how much they emit. So first thing is the company have to realize how much they are emitting and what they can do. So starting point is company have to be aware about the result of their businesses on emission amount. So, and then also nowadays companies needs to know not only emission, coming from their own direct businesses, but they are also purchasing a lot of intermediate goods, machinery, and after they produce it, they sell their product to the users. So nowadays, the company have to know those upstream, downstream suppliers' emission data. And very recently, if you look at what's happening globally, large companies, they transact with other companies, cross-border transaction. And then many companies, they are recently asked from other companies about how much are you emitting? Because once, large companies started to realize they have to disclose their GHG emission and they want to reduce GHG emission, they ask their counterparties, their business partners, how much you are emitting. So now a lot of companies prepare for the data and then give information to their trade partners. Okay, so that is happening right now. And one more issue is, as I already said, creditors and investors, they want to contribute to climate issue. But at this moment, because it's not, information is not standardized, they are not really sure whether they can invest their money in a proper way without causing any greenwashing. So it's also for the creditor and investor, and also we need to develop market, the green market, climate market, to support corporate sector's behavior. So as Komori-san said, so in the past, when we look at climate-related disclosure or sustainability-related disclosure, there was a dozen of disclosure standards. And then many of them were developed by NGO, think tank, and mostly private sector initiatives. From investors' point of view, there are too many. So, and then every company picked their preferred disclosure standard. So comparison was not possible. So then TCFD guideline was created at the initiative of G20 and FSB. And then TCFD guideline was created, but it was known to certain countries like Japan, but in many Southeast Asia and emerging economy, TCFD guideline was not really well known. Then ISSB standard was created, and this is more, I think it's getting known to many jurisdictions as a global standard, and ISSB incorporated and merged certain those disclosure entity. So it's becoming more standardized, and so that started from 2024. So ISSB, I think, is a global, most important global standard. If you look at the current global standards, so TCFD guideline was taken over by ISSB, if I may say, in the form of IFRS-S2. EU has a CSRD, and their E1 disclosure is related to climate change. There are some overlap, but the EU have a bit their own approach, so not completely exactly same as TCFD. There is some additional element. And for example, ISSB is basically looking at the impact of climate change on financial performance, such as cash flow, sales, and the balance sheet. But EU also look at the externality. So what is the corporate sector's behavior's impact on climate change? So two ways. So EU's standard is much broader and is somewhat different. But anyway, when we look at the global guideline, at least there are two. One is ISSB, and another one is EU CSRD, and which is mandatorily adopted by EU members and some neighboring countries around EU. But the rest of the countries, I think ISSB is becoming a global standard. Also, California is going to implement TCFD or equivalent, so meaning ISSB disclosure. So like Japanese or foreign company which are operating in California, they are also subject to this kind of disclosure. On the bottom, I think it's already ISSB explained. Those are countries who show very strong interest and committed to adopting ISSB disclosure standard. So it will be explained by ISSB board members after me. So ISSB, this disclosure at this stage is comprised of the two. One is S1, and which is sustainability, includes a general requirement. It's like a, I think, prototype. ISSB, if as S2 is related to climate-related disclosure, but in any case, S1, S2, it's a comprised of 4 core contents. So it's always, when you ask companies to disclose information, it's basically disclosure should be made based on governance pillar, strategy pillar, and risk management pillar, and metrics and target. So this is kind of a globally accepted disclosure framework now. And so for the sustainability in general and climate change. In addition, in S2, they have 7 cross-industry metrics, and then the GHG emission data is included there. So, and then there is additional ISSB industry-based metrics, but I think a basic one is S1 and S2. So this is like what I said, core element. So every company, they have to describe how the government, governance, so board members, managerial people, how do they monitor this emission reduction effort and progress with regards to target. Those managerial responsibility must be written by the company. The second one, the strategy is an area I think a lot of investors pay attention to. So here under the strategy, company have to disclose which climate related risk material for them, and what opportunity do they have, and the impact on sales, profit, balance sheet, and access to finance. And so this is important. One more issue is transition plan, because once a company set the emission reduction target, that transition plan should explain how the company is going to achieve it. What are they going to do with capital spending, research and development, organizational change? Those detailed transition plan is important. And risk management, the company have to explain how did they identify which risk greater than others. And to me, most important part of this ISSB disclosure is metrics and target, because this is can be quantitative target. And so GHG emissions data are included, and also emission reduction target. And so I think this is really most important from investors' point of view. So I briefly talk about GHG protocol. So when you ask companies to disclose GHG emission, it is globally accepted to use GHG protocol. And GHG protocol ask the companies to disclose GHG emission based on scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Scope 1 is easy, relatively easy. It's emission coming from companies' own factory, companies' own businesses, companies' own automobile, etc. The scope 2 is an indirect emission, which comes from purchased electricity. Scope 1, scope 2 are related to companies' own emissions. But scope 3 is far more challenging, because scope 3 covers upstream and downstream supplier and users. It's comprised of 15 categories like this. So if we are talking about automobile companies, what they do is the most important emission for the automobile company is usually related to number 11. That is after they produce complete cars, they sell it to the users, and then users usually say 6 years, 10 years. So company can calculate the average emission from the users driving. So it depends on the sector. And so, in the case of automobile, it's number 11. I just mentioned a few minutes ago, banks, large banks, listed banks, they also start to disclose ISSB disclosure. For the banks and institution investors, number 15 is most important. This is investment. So if I'm a bank owner, for me, my financed emission is most important. So the banks do not emit a lot because they don't manufacture things, but the emission coming from client is very big because a lot of banks, they finance utility company, manufacturing company. So lots of emission come from finance emission. So banks and like insurance company and pension funds, those for those people, investment finance is emission is very large. So it's not easy to show scope 3. It takes time for company to disclose those emissions. But I just want to say why scope 3 emission is so important. Why can't we just focus on scope 1 and scope 2? It's because it's a life cycle. It's a supply chain. And suppose that we are talking about automobile manufacturers, they are still responsible for using emission-intensive parts and emission-intensive machinery. So under the umbrella of this supply chain, the responsibility should cover suppliers and users. One more issue. Suppose we just require companies to disclose scope 1 and scope 2. What will happen? What will happen is that a company will have an incentive to make their subsidiary or their affiliated company to be independent. And then if it becomes independent, those independent companies' disclosure will not be included in scope 1 and scope 2. So such kind of manipulation will happen. Then it doesn't really contribute to the global GHG emission reduction. So that's why scope 3 is important, even though it's very difficult to disclose. Just to simplify how company calculates GHG emission. So for the company, they have their own economic activity, right? How much they produce at the factory, how much the clothes they sell, and so it can be up to the company, what unit they use. So it's a company-specific economic activities multiplied by emission factors. Emission factors, the best way is a company calculate by themselves, but the starting point for a lot of emerging and developing countries, the government can start to calculate emission factors for companies. Okay, so you can look at the Japanese government data, US government data, and also UK has a very detailed emission factor data. So you also UN and IEA has some data. So you can use those data as a starting point. But anyway, it will be calculated as the following formula. I just really want to emphasize GHG emission data is the most important data in terms of climate-related disclosure. Why? Because GHG emission is the only uniform indicator. We need to pay attention to biodiversity and nature, etc., but they don't have a common unit. But in terms of this climate mitigation, the GHG emission is a uniform global common unit. So usually we calculate in terms of ton carbon dioxide equivalent. So that's why it's very important. We can compare those data across the company, across the country. So starting to develop this GHG emission data infrastructure is very important. And so we have GHG protocol, so we know how to measure it. And then also because it's measurable, we can calculate the measurable impact of climate change on corporate financial performance. Okay, so I just really emphasize how important emission data are. Finally, quickly, I'd like to share with you some of the survey finding we got from this February. We did a survey this February, and there's a very big papers related to that. You can look at it from the website Agnes mentioned. So here I'd like to show you a few results related to ISSB disclosures. So we got the response from 12 jurisdictions. We don't disclose the name of countries, and so that everybody can, respond flexibly. So I cannot mention which country responded, but surely it comes from Asia. So let me explain you some of the results. So we really wanted to know whether financial regulators plan to mandate this disclosure to the companies. So mandatory disclosure, whether they have already done or they are planning to mandate ISSB disclosure, that is very important for us to know. And out of 12 financial regulators, 67% said they already mandated or they plan to mandate. And of this 67%, 60% of financial regulators said they already have a very clear timeline. So probably they will have a phasing approach, and clear date is already set. So, and then 40% hasn't really set the time frame up yet. But I think this is a very big advancement because we did a similar survey last February, last year, 1 year ago, when we started. Almost nobody knew about ISSB standard, and then not everybody knew about TCFD recommendations. So at that time, people just started to understand what is this ISSB standard. So now 67% are preparing for that. That is a very big achievement. Now, tomorrow, you'll hear more about this full implementation of ISSB standard. So when we say full implementation means there is a ISSB disclosure standard. So without any modification, if the regulator is going to implement ISSB disclosure, that is called full implementation. And then we found about 25% of regulator said they already adapted or planning to adapt full adaptation. Partial adaptation is already planned or decided by another 25% of financial regulator, and 50% haven't decided. So tomorrow you'll hear more about the explanation related to full implementation. And we really wanted to know the scope of target disclosure target companies. And also you hear tomorrow from ISSB expert about the target. I think my understanding is that ISSB try to look at listed company, especially large listed companies. And then when we look at the stock market, usually there are 3 types. One is a prime market, flagship market. And second one is like a standard market. And then there is a growth, like a venture like technology startup type listing. My understanding is ISSB really put a lot of emphasis on sort of a prime market, large listed companies. And so we asked the scope of the target companies. And out of these 12 regulators, the 50% said they are already apply or planning to apply ISSB disclosure to all listed companies. So including prime, standard, and growth segment. That is very big, good surprise to me. And out of this 50%, 70% said they are going to include large unlisted companies. That is very interesting to know. And some Asian countries, not all large companies are listed. So some regulator already started to do capacity building workshop and try to talk with unlisted company. So that is very interesting to find out. 70% of regulators said they are going to apply ISSB disclosure solely to prime market listed companies. Okay, so to me, this was a quite good surprise. And then we asked what regulator is going to do about the disclosure of GHG emission, scope 1, 2, 3, which is most important data. And 42% of regulators said they are going to make scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 mandatory. Perhaps scope 3 may take some time, but eventually they're going to require the disclosure of all scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. And 8% said they are going to recommend rather than a requirement to disclose scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So 50% of the regulator in Asia said, anyway, they will pay attention to scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Now, some countries still need to build up the capacity. So it's very difficult to require scope 3 disclosure. So some countries, they start with scope 1, scope 2 disclosure only. Okay, so it's quite good to know this result. Also, assurance. So tomorrow you'll hear about assurance. Assurance is important. If the company disclose GHG emission, I think somebody, independent third party, should check whether those measurement is appropriate to avoid any manipulation of data. So eventually, third party assurance is important, and all regulator knows that. But at this stage, it's a bit difficult to require the third party assurance to many target company. So only 33% of target company, 33% of the regulators will require the third-party assurance. And 8% they will require assurance only to certain targeted companies. So most likely large listed companies. So 58% haven't decided. This is because we had a lot of communication with the financial regulator. I think they have to develop the assurance entities, and then maybe some training, capacity building training is important. And it takes some time to develop those industry. So that's why 58% haven't really decided yet. Finally, we asked about gross and net emission target. So company should disclose emission reduction target, but ISSB also clarify the difference between gross and net. So gross emission target is the company's scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, all emission data. So company can disclose emission reduction target. But company can also disclose based on net emission target. But when we say net, it means total GHG emission minus the carbon credit purchased from third parties. So company can offset some of their emission through purchasing and using carbon credit. So this difference between gross and net are very important. So we ask to the financial regulator whether they are already asking to disclose gross and net, differentiate between gross and net target to their companies. And only 70% at this moment, they emphasize the difference between gross and net. And of this 70%, 50% is going to make it mandatory disclosure, differentiate gross and net. And another 50% will only recommend to differentiate gross and net. I think eventually it's very important to differentiate gross and net. And we have to talk about carbon credit and carbon market. And so we also have a lot of papers and then roundtable to discuss about carbon credit. And so that is also very important. So all related paper, you can see this, and then I hope you can learn from our activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Shirai. Before we move to session 3, I just want to share with you a couple of questions we received, and thank you, dear participants, for your active participation. I thought those questions are good also to clarify some points. So someone was asking, how can we control the exact disclosure if a company publishes less GHG emission information?
Yes. So I think at this moment, I think scope 1, scope 2 is not extremely difficult to disclose. So I think regulators should focus on scope 1, scope 2. Scope 3 takes time because 15 category and, big company have thousands of so many, suppliers. So it takes time. So we don't punish. I think ISSB will explain, we don't punish company just because they disclose part of it. So over time, they are going to extend the coverage of scope 3. So it's not really, important at this moment whether they disclose perfect information. Takes time. So starting with scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 is a good starting point. Yeah.
And also third-party assurance can guarantee that there is no intentional miscommunication or misdisclosure, I guess.
Yeah, so assurance providers, they cannot assure that the company's GHG emissions are true. Nobody can do it because it's all calculated. The assurers can tell, checking a company's methodology, calculation, whether those calculations are correct. No manipulation of data.
Yeah. Oh, that's clear. Thank you. And there is another question on who is setting the disclosure framework, central bank or government? And what is the role of the Securities Exchange? Can you clarify this just for the good understanding of everyone?
Yeah. So I think the regulators which regulate listed company, listing is most important. So in the case of Japan, it will be done by Financial Services Agency. Every country, there is a regulator. We call it financial regulator, which gives a lot of ruling, regulation related to listing. So that is most important. But we also engage with central bank because central bank is the one who monitor the banking system. Okay? So, some of the listed banks, they are under the umbrella of this listing requirement. But, many banks are not listed. So, but the central bank look at it. So that's why we need to do both. So, but the most important one is listing requirement. Make it mandatory listing requirement based on ISSB disclosure important, but also central bank have to understand how to monitor banking sectors, emission data and how they manage climate risk.
But for listed companies, yes, Securities Exchange commissions are critical. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shirai. So now you all have a good understanding of sustainability issues, existing standards, and GHG protocol. I'm happy to welcome our two presenters for the third session. Our two presenters are Komori-san and Mr. Tai-Young Pike. They will walk us through a technical overview of the ISSB standards, particularly the IFRS S1 and the IFRS S2. Before we start, let me share that we will take a 10-minute break during this session at the end of the part focusing on S1. Dear presenters, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Agnes. So we move on to the next slide. Okay, slide 2. Next one, please. Yes. So in this session, we will introduce you to the high-level understanding of the IFRS S1 and S2. And we also set out the next steps for the ISSB to be planning right now, as well as some tips on how companies can prepare for this. So the slide 4, please. Yes, thank you. So this is a strong market demand for a global baseline, which is our S1 and S2. So there are 3 bullets on this page. First one is a decision useful comparable information. This is for investors worldwide. And the third bullet, an efficient reporting landscape. This is for preparers, companies worldwide. And between 2 of them, the second one, ending the alphabet soup of voluntary initiatives. So this is for both preparers and investors, which means for the benefit of the global capital market overall. So on my background as an investor side at the GPIF Government Pension Investment Fund in Japan, investors need decision useful, consistent, comparable information that enables them to understand sustainability-related risks and opportunities, including climate. So information has been provided. However, not in a consistent manner for the investors, and it has designed to meet different audiences, such as employees, nature, suppliers, clients, such and such, rather than investors. So there has been confusion around the myriad of standards and frameworks voluntary, with companies and investors seeking clarify and guidance. This is what we call alphabet soup at the ISSB, and also G7, IOSCO, FSB worldwide. So by consolidating and inheriting the resources of other investor-focused initiatives, SASB standards, IRRC, CDSB, and TCFD, the ISSB has been able to address fragmentation, which is alphabet soup due to alphabet soup, and align international support for a global baseline of sustainability disclosures, for example, G7, G20, and the Financial Stability Board, as I said. So already we know that jurisdictions such as Japan, Singapore, and the UK are looking at routes to introduce the ISSB standards, and that jurisdictions such as Nigeria and other African and Latin American jurisdictions have publicly announced their intention to early adopt ISSB standards as they are. Then we move on to slide 7, please. Yeah, and next one. Yes, thank you very much. So the ISSB aims to consolidate the global sustainability disclosure landscape, as I said, to reduce the complexity of having multiple sources of reporting guidance, particularly voluntary one, while building on the established expertise and the practice associated with market-leading frameworks and standards. So the creation of ISSB involves a consolidation of the Climate Disclosure Standard Board, CDSB, second from the right-hand side, and the Value Reporting Foundation, which govern materials from the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, SASB standards, second from the left-hand side, and the International Integrated Reporting Council, Integrated Reporting Framework, the left-hand side, IRC. So IFRS S1 and S2 fully incorporates the recommendations of the TCFD and build on and consolidates materials from the Integrated Reporting Framework, SASB standards, and the CDSB guidance. So as a member of ISSB from this region, because of these foundations, I'm sure companies in this region, in this Asia-Oceania region, which already have accustomed to those standards, particularly Integrated Reporting Framework and the TCFD, are well positioned to start applying the ISSB standards. We move on to slide 8, please. Yes. So this is the slide where we are now. So we issued S1 and S2 on the second quarter of 2023 in June 2023. And then after that, we are now working very hard under the 2-year work plan, which was issued in the second quarter of 2024 as a top one on the second from the right-hand side. So under this 2-year work plan, we are now doing is 3 works. One is supporting implementation of S1 and S2 at each jurisdiction by way of discussion with regulators, as Professor Shirai explained that in case of Japan, Financial Service Agency of Japan, and the standard setters, Sustainability Standard Board of Japan, SSBJ, for example. Also, by way of educational materials and other webinars, which will be explained later, say tomorrow, I think, by our staff. And the second one is a research project of human capital and biodiversity, which we call BEES. And the third one is an enhancement of ISSB standards. So those 3 are not independently each other. They are very much closely interconnected each other for our mission, towards our mission to remove alphabet soup from the world capital market. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is a list of 35 jurisdictions, which I explained in my keynote speech, which adopt S1 and S2 or in other use. So as a member of ISSB from this region, together with Taeyang and Binlen from China, I'm very pleased to see that 14 jurisdictions from Asia, Oceania are very much fastly moving forward to adopt or other in a different shape of S1 and S2. And hopefully jurisdictions of today's attendees would start the same type of say journey with us going forward. And in case of Japan, if I may say, explain in detail, first, SSBJ, Sustainability Standard Board of Japan, finally fixed the SSBJ standards in March this year, last month. And ISSB and SSBJ confirm the gaps, deviations between the 2 standards, because the Japanese, standard setter employ the way of capacity building up block approach. So therefore, we needed to confirm the differences between the two standards. And as a result of that, we are very happy to announce that SSBJ standards, which is a Japanese standard, are very closely designed to be functionally aligned with IFAS S1 and S2, which is good news for me personally as well. And finally, FSA is now going to be on a formal process how to make Japanese mandatory sustainability-related disclosure standards into the current financial security report, as a mandatory standard on the financial side. So therefore, FSA will pay tremendous effort to set up such a mandatory framework, legal framework in Japan going forward, and also assurance. Again, as Professor Shirai pointed out, this is a very important issue. So FSA hosts, working group for disclosure and also assurance of the sustainability standards as well. And the next slide, please. So 35 jurisdictions worldwide now dominate nearly 60% of world GDP, and also 40% of global market capitalization. And if you exclude US equity bond market, it goes up to 80%, 80%, which is a high level, very much big number in a capital market. And finally, in terms of GHG emissions, they dominate now 50% plus nearly 60%. So this is a reality in the capital market as a result of very much, say, great effort of the 35 jurisdictions to go ahead with our S1 and S2 as a global baseline. So next, slide 13, please. So this is assurance. ISSB is not responsible for deciding whether reports are subject to assurance or not. In the same way that IASB side does not decide if financial statements are subject to audit in a IFRS accounting standard side as well. So that is a decision made by jurisdiction regulators on their own. So therefore, discussions about assurability have been made by International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, IWASB or IAASB. So they issued ISSA 5000 last year. And then I think that Big Four and other assurers are now learning and studying and examining how to make the assurance on the sustainability discussions. But the problem is, as you see a case of EU omnibus status right now, I think that there are lots of, say, issues on assurance, whether they should do limited assurance or reasonable assurance, from when, how, such and such. So I think that assurance would be a very complicated but important issue for both companies and also investors as well. So slide 14, please. So as I just said, I'm sure everyone is interested in what is going on in the EU right now with EU omnibus discussions. Of course, we have been very much closely contacting with EU Commission and some other important people on the EU side. But I'm afraid it would be a little bit early right now to say something definite at this stage. So therefore, I think that we need to wait for a moment to see what's happening and what will be decided in the end inside EU. However, I think that the good news is that by streamlining the ESRS, I think they are approaching to IFRS S1 and S2 overall. Details are not yet sure, including the sector-specific standard, SASB standard issue, but overall, we have a good impression, the direction of, say, EU omnibus right now. But this is very much related with the political and dynamic, say, economic dynamic situation is related. So therefore, we need to be careful and not to be over optimistic. But I think that ISSB is now waiting for good news from the EU side. And that would be a great benefit for the companies worldwide to avoid dual disclosure using two standards. So that is our own idea right now, particularly as a message from our chair, Emmanuel Fabel, who worked as a CFO, CEO, and the chairman of the Danone, French food company, conglomerate company. So move on to slide 16. So in order to deploy our 2-year work plan, we've got MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with those 5, partners, which is our strategic partners in the end. TDP, GHG Protocol, GRI, Transition Plan Task Force, TPT, and Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, famous TNFD. So, for example, by June 2025, we will issue guidance of transition plan utilizing TPT expertise or their educational material. And also, we decided to work closely more with TNFD for the research project of biodiversity ecosystem and biodiversity ecosystem services, which we call BEES. And finally, with GRI, which many companies in this region are very accustomed to the GRI, and some of the Asian countries or regulators use GRI as a part of a mandatory disclosure of our sustainabilities. So therefore, GRI is very much important partner for us. So we decided to work together in the very early stage of human capital and particularly BEES, research project going forward. So we move on to page 9, slide 19. Next one, please. So now this is S1 and S2. So first, IFRS S1 covers all sustainability-related risks and opportunities, while IFRS S2 provides more detailed requirements on risks and opportunities related to climate. So this is a set of general requirement standards S1 and topic-specific standards S2. So this is our basic way of design when we issued S1 and S2. So therefore, when we move on to our next agendas, next standards, such as human capital and BEES, nobody knows yet whether we will decide, let's go to the next step of a standard setting of human capital and the BEES yet. But when we have S3 and S4, 5, 6, or series, others, and the following series, companies always need to come back to S1 as a general requirement after they examine their own risk and opportunities on climate with S2, human capital, S3, for example, and the BEES on S4, for example, on such and such. So this is a very much basic framework of designing of our disclosure standards. And the next slide, please, slide 20. So this is, as you may be aware, very much that the governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets, which we picked up from the TCFD recommendations. So IFRS S1 requires a company to disclose information about governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets on, as you see. So these 4 core contents areas reflect how companies manage those risks and opportunities at each, company level, on the board level as well. And we go to slide 22, please. So this is IFRS S1 general requirements for disclosure of sustainability-related financial information. So one thing I want to emphasize is that we didn't make simple sustainability disclosure standard at all. We made sustainability-related financial information under the umbrella of IFRS Foundation, and independently say, tandem with the IASB side on accounting side and the ISSB side on our side, sustainability. So using S1, we require companies to disclose the material information on the first line about sustainability-related risks and opportunities with the financial statements under the, say, IFRS Foundation's umbrella to meet investor information needs. And in order to do that, we introduced 4 core factors, 4 core elements of a TCFD architecture, and also sustainability, probably different from accounting standards. Sustainability seems to be very much specific and different to each, say, sector, industry, and then each company's business model, size, and the value chain, such and such. So that's why we picked up SASB standards as a industry-specific disclosures. And finally, the important thing is that S1, S2 are GAAP agnostic, accounting requirements agnostic standards. So companies which use own jurisdiction standards or US GAAP or say Japanese GAAP, they can freely utilize our S1 and S2 as a GAAP agnostic. And slide 24, please. Yeah, so this is the objective of S1. First of all, as I repeatedly said, that investors require disclosure which meet their own information needs for their own decision making in their portfolio, in their investment, or candidates of potential investment in future or divestment, something like that. And which means information should be sustainability related risks and opportunities that could reasonably be expected to affect the company's prospect, its cash flows, access to finance, or cost of capital over the short, medium, long term. So this is the mission of S1 in this sense, to meet, to provide or to require the companies to disclose not only simple sustainability related information at all, but sustainability related material information which could reasonably expect or to affect the company's prospect in this financial information and the business model in a short, medium, long term. We move on to slide 27. So I would say that investors will examine and analyze using connected information using IFRS S1, S2, and others. So that's why we require the information that helps investors understand the connections between companies' own sustainability-related risks and opportunities, disclosures or core content, and the sustainability-related financial disclosures and the financial statements. And also, in order to do that, the disclosure should be prepared for the same reporting entity and the reporting period the same, and they provide the same time at the same time with the financial information statement and also general purpose financial reports, which includes the sustainability information. And include data and assumptions that are consistent with the corresponding data and assumptions in the related financial statement to the extent possible, considering accounting requirements. However, it's not easy, as Professor Shirai pointed out, that in case of particularly Scope 3 emissions, nobody can assure 100% yet according to the today's scientific technology. So therefore, assurance is very difficult in this sense, and therefore, but anyway, investors need information to be required to be disclosed by companies, even if that is a very nascent data in right now. And slide 29, please. So this is our message guide to the companies worldwide. How companies need to decide what information should be disclosed to the market, to the capital market. So we say the left-hand side as a step 1, and the right-hand side as a step 2. And step 1 on the left-hand side, such as a sustainability department or CSR department or human capital department or other, say, internal, say, department inside the companies use the S2, S3, S4 and decide which information which information would reasonably affect the company's cash flows, cost of capital, access to capital, business model, such and such. And also, they shall refer to SASB standards because this is a sustainability information. But also, company may also use TDSB framework or GRI, ESRS, or other standards. And based on this, say, work using S2, S3, 4, the process would be handed over to the step 2, which would be a discussion on management and the board level of the companies using threshold definition of materiality. Investors don't need every information which companies think would affect the company's cash flow or other financial information. Investors only need material information. So therefore, in order to complete step 2 work on the board level, companies need to make own definition of materiality and the number of years, short term, mid term, long term. And then they need to show the investors whether their definition of materiality and the number of years would be appropriate for investors. And the problem is, investors differs very much from the hedge funds, short funds, long funds, long-term funds, and short-term, mid-term, long-term, such and such, or active passive funds, such and such. So therefore, companies need to find out reliable, say, investors throughout their own financial disclosure IR work before they find out good investors. So this is the starting point of a communication between companies and investors. So that's why we design S1 and S2 as a very much detailed compliance type of disclosure standard at all. We design S1 and S2 as a great useful tool for companies to communicate with their investors and vice versa. So that is our own, motivation when we discuss with the character or the principle of S1 and S2, say, at the ISSB board meeting. And we move on to slide 32. Yes, thank you. And this is a relief because there is a very difficult issue of scope 3, for example. So we set up the relief, several reliefs for the first year of application when jurisdiction decide they start mandatory disclosure standard at each jurisdiction level. So this can be applicable for the first year after the year of the mandatory disclosure standard is set. So the company can limit disclosures to climate-related information which means the company can disclose information without other, say, information such as human capital or BEs. They can limit disclosures to climate-related information on the first year. And then it would be difficult. For example, the case of Japanese companies, it would be very difficult to make a simultaneous, say, disclosure both of financial information and also sustainability information at the same time. So therefore, limited to the first year, companies can delay sustainability-related disclosure to the half-year financial reporting. So, in case of Japan, so the March end is a typical Japanese accounting closing date, and then financial information should be made by the end of June after the AGM. But the companies don't need to disclose the same time disclosure of sustainability information. Companies can do that after the 6 months later, so therefore December end, something like that. And the scope 3 disclosure not required in the first year. And also companies do not need to apply greenhouse gas protocol if companies already use a different measurement approach. For example, the mandatory standard of GHG emissions at each jurisdiction level. And the companies do not need to provide comparative information from the first year as well. And perhaps we move back to sorry. Right, sorry, I just stopped here. And also some other detailed information of adoption or implementation would be explained by my colleagues, say, on a session tomorrow afternoon on the JST. So I stop here, and then perhaps we have a break right
Yes.
now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Komori-san. Indeed, we will have a 10-minute break. But just before that, let me ask you a couple of quick questions because we received a lot of questions. Someone was asking, are there any assessments to estimate the cost of implementing ISSB standard for government? It's a difficult question, but there are many questions on, why some countries decided not to implement ISSB standard. Is it too expensive? Do you have any study or to estimate the average cost, or this study does not exist?
Unfortunately, not
Yeah.
on particularly on the ISSB board members' side. For example, but I'm afraid I don't understand correctly about the cost itself as the questioner
Yeah,
raised.
I think it's very difficult to monetize it because implementing the ISSB standard requires a lot of actions from the regulators, supervisors. it also requires to understand the standard itself, and that's why we also organize this kind of capacity building event.
Yes, maybe my answer would be the jurisdiction's regulator and the standard setters experience in the past when they try to set up, say, financial accounting standards or other regulations one by one. Probably they will set up, say, the official public standard setters, say, not webinar, but open discussions, and which takes, say, 1 year,
Yes.
2 years or more, something like that. And then regulators, for example, the Financial Services Agency in Japan, move on to the official process to revise the current, say, standard, current mandatory standard and such and such. So it takes, it takes many years to complete this complicated process. So, which means a cost in a sense, I would say.
Yeah, countries who want to implement the ISSB standards needs to consider it and allocate, of course, the necessary human resources and some financial resources. But institutions like the ADB Institute or ADB, together with IFRS Foundation, can also help them starting this process through capacity building events or activities.
Yes.
So, please go ahead.
Sorry, Agnes. So, my colleague tomorrow, you will see Jonathan Bravo and Jolene in Beijing. Jonathan is located in Frankfurt office, and they are actually supporting each jurisdiction and the standard setters, such as when, say, a standard setter have a question, how to understand this, I first say paragraph this, something like that. Then they always support, and which actually they did with in case of Japan as well. So we are very much would like to support the effort and even including the cost of say not monetary cost, but
more like
non-financial time or labor or resources. We are ready to support. Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Komori-san, for this presentation. Very rich and clear. So we will now pause for 10 minutes. So let's meet again at 4:37 Tokyo time. And we will continue the online training. Thank you. So we can now start again the online training. So I will now hand over the floor to Mr. Paik. Taeyong, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Agnes. Good afternoon, everyone. So let me, I think I can move on to the S2 slide from now on. So S2, we call it IFRS 2, or actually the full name is IFRS Sustainability Related Financial Disclosure Standard S2. It's about climate issue. So we can call it climate-related disclosures. So this is first systematic disclosure standard we developed. And we may also develop other standard in near future on nature and human capital and so on, but we haven't made the decision. So let me talk about climate disclosure only today. So as previous speaker said, our S2 standard is based on TCFD and recommendation. So we took most of TCFD recommendation, which have been used for many companies and many regions for many years. So, if you wanna start S2, you'd better see the previous disclosure example prepared by the company because they have a lot of industry specific disclosure example prepared by those company. And also you can see what would be, the typical way of making a disclosure. So we are going to have a new example based on S2 from now on. But if you want to see more example, it's be very nice to see TCFD-based disclosure in previous years. So as mentioned by two speakers before, basically our IFRS sustainability standard is for financial decision making. So we said this is for information for the need of the investor. So in other words, we call the financial maturity perspective. But when you use S2, since S1 has general requirement of timing, location, and so on, so you have to use S1 together with S2 because it covers general additional specific requirement. And as mentioned a little bit before, basically we have financial material perspective. That means when you report climate-related content, climate risk and opportunity. Basically, you have to make a materiality judgment or financial materiality judgment to decide what kind of information to give. And on one key term I like to emphasize enough today is two kinds of risk involved. One is fiscal risk and the other is a transition risk. So we have some use of impact, but we require report on information when those impact create a risk, either through fiscal or transition risk. And typically, emission are related to transition risk because there are a lot of regulation based on emission number. So I want to emphasize especially fiscal risk side. Because when many people talk about climate-related disclosure, that they have too much emphasis on emission number itself. Emission numbers is the best number for the measure of impact for climate change. But for us, we are using emission numbers as a key measure for exposure to transition risk. Because transition risk are coming from regulation or bias request or from a reputation perspective. But fiscal risk is not directly related to your own emission number, because we can classify fiscal risk in two kinds. One is acute risk and the other is chronic risk. So I assume that some of the audience today are from public sector, or they may have public related project. So when we consider climate related risk, you shouldn't forget about fiscal risk, because even if you are not making much emission, or even when you make a lot of emission, the fiscal risk you are facing from, for example, extreme weather condition, like too much hot weather or the wildfires we are experiencing in many countries, are coming fiscal risk. So that has nothing to do with, that has not much relationship current year emission you are producing from your entity. So especially for those people who are involved in the public sector operation, I want to emphasize that you shouldn't forget about fiscal risk you might face in your operation, whether your operation itself has direct impact on climate issue, or you are working on some other social issue. Still, you have to see if there are any fiscal risks related to climate, which may danger your operation. And as touched by other people, we do have appendix showing in the specific disclosure as an illustrative example based on ISSB standard. Next, please. So basically, to provide material climate-related information to the investor, now you have to see the effect of those risk and opportunity on your company's performance and also your prospect. When you say prospect, actually there are three components. One is cash flow and cost of capital. And the last one is access to capital. And you are using these three elements for prospect because these are key elements to determine the company's market value. And also, as I emphasized already, excuse me, we have a four-pillar approach adopted from TCFD. So we have a strategy section, which includes transition planning. And also the company have to evaluate their ability to adopt its planning, business model and operation and so on. And also it should include value chain, not just in emission number, but also analyzing any fiscal or transition risk. Next, please. So when you use S2, I said you have to apply IFRS 1 together because S1 covers key concept and it provides some guidance on how to assess materiality. And also, there are some qualitative characteristics of information to be used. And also, there are key issue of the reporting entity. And if you are consolidated in accounting sense, then your reporting scope will be a consolidated body. And also timing and location of reporting is very sensitive. So timing should be annual reporting time. But we have first year relief, as I just explained before by previous speaker. And the location should be part of the report based on our standard should be located in part of general purpose financial reports, meaning annual report or financial filing. So before, voluntary disclosure based on some of the standard like TCFD, GRI, and so on, they used a separate report of the sustainability report apart from which is not part of general purpose financial reporting. But our standard required to have this contents of disclosure based on S1 and S2 and part of general purpose file reporting, and that would be one of big changes. But if you have other form of general purpose file reporting, as far as you put it there, it should be okay. And one example with integrated reporting. And when in a country where integrated reporting is part of general purpose financial report, now you can have this our contents, our disclosure content in that report as well. And also, connectivity was also emphasized before, and also, comparatives, meaning the previous number should be reported in this, report we are asking, except the first year. And also, S1 talks about how you can deal with some of changes in the estimate and error and so on. So that's why the first part of S1 should be used together with S2. The second part of S2 is about non-climate disclosure contents. Next, please. So from TCFD, we took 4 pillar approaches, which are governance, strategy, risk management, and metric target. And since ESRS and even the stopped SEC in US standard on climate change has same 4-pillar approach that help to have interoperability among these three major top standard we are seeing in the world. So for each pillar, we can say in general, and TCFD recommendation, TC core elements are broadly consistent to our S2 requirement with some other addition. So people called it S2 is culmination at TCFD requirement because we expanded TCFD recommendation and we added additional requirement. The additional part is explained on the right-hand side of the table, as you can see. So we do have industry-based guidance. We require additional information about resiliency, and also, we are not specifying which climate scenario to use. So if they do use some scenario, they have to report it, but we don't specify which one should be used because we are not our standards are not designed for policy-driven purpose. And also, now we provide additional guidance and relief to help users, preparers. And also we have some explanation about opportunity. So company have to report not just risk, but also opportunities. And in the metric and target side, we have industry-based metrics required, but we didn't say which metrics should be used. That's why in appendix of S2, we have ISSB-based content metrics, industry-based metric, which are strongly recommended. And we say shall consider those holistic example based on ISSB. We don't say shall use ISSB content in appendix. We say shall consider to use them. And we also have some other additional guidance and relief for metrics and targets as well. Next, please. So I can touch on some of key contents of two pillars. One is strategy, and the other one is metrics and target. So in strategy pillar, basically covers what kind of strategy related to climate change the company has, the reporting body has. Well, actually, I shouldn't say company, reporting entity, because reporting entity could be a public entity, not-for-profit organization. And also, strategy part covers decision making, the entity is making. And I think the key element of strategy section is current and anticipated financial effect. And this content is the key feature of disclosure for financial materiality orientation. So the current means this year reporting year's financial effect on companies like finance performance statement, like an income statement, and also balance sheet, statement of final position, and so on. So basically, this section, this part of strategy, has a strong tie with financial statement, because basically we are asking company to report some information related to effect on financial position and financial performance. So, for this particular section, financial expert, the people from finance division should help making the standard, because they are the best person to make their judgment or for current effect and also for future effect. And this section, especially current effect side, has strong connectivity with the financial statement reporting. And that's why now, even in International Accounting Standard Board, they have some project related to the current financial effect coming from the climate change, risk and opportunity. And also climate resilience is very important information for investors to learn to make their own final decision in their financial investment decision. And in the metric targets, definitely all scopes 1 through 3, greenhouse gas emission are covered. But something I want to emphasize is, for every contents of disclosure required, we have to make maturity judgment. So, you are not required every part of scope 1, 2, and 3. The coverage is all 3 scope, but depending on your financial maturity judgment, you can skip part of these scope of emission. So we do have example reporting only part of scope 3 emission, not every 15 category. And even 1 and 2 could be not immaterial financially, but typically it's not the case. But in principle, every time we say you shall disclose something, it doesn't mean you should do it in any condition. So depending on your financial maturity judgment, you can decide in which part we are going to report and in which part we are not going to report. And I mentioned in the space disclosure already, and also there is a target part as well. Next, please. So in the first pillar, strategy and decision making, basically we want to know what kind of effect climate-related risk and opportunity coming from the entity's dependence or impact related climate change making on companies' strategy and decision making. So basically, their plan to respond to climate-related risk and opportunities is a key part of strategy. So if you do have transition plan, you have to report it. So we are not saying you should have a transition plan, or you should have particular transition plan. That's not our goal, because what we're trying to pursue is transparency and accountability, not policy-driven target or the plan. So here, so we are saying that disclosure of transition plan company, if the company have, so you are not saying you should create your own plan right now. If you do have it, report it. And also you have to, I mean, the reporting entity should explain how you can get a resource for those plan and activity. And they have to report also how the entity is progressing against your plan and so on. So assuming the main users of Zendesk are private company, we are using the term of company as a preparer. But as I said, it could be private company, it could be a public company, or what I mean, a public purpose company, or it could be not-for-profit organization, including government. So any entity can use our standard if you want to report climate-related risk and opportunity for a particular period. Thank you. So to have more detailed explanation of current anticipated financial effect, basically, when you say effect, it doesn't mean not necessarily. It doesn't mean necessarily monetary number. So what we are asking is could be quantitative or qualitative information, and even quantitative information is not necessarily currency. It could be non-currency number as well. So especially for the future-related anticipated information, it's hard to get quantitative information. And even when the preparer provides quantitative information, it could be a single amount or a range from minimum and maximum. So we have more flexibility in the format of contents we have to provide. But we know if the preparer can provide quantitative information, that will be nicer. But if it is too difficult to do that, because it's not separately identifiable, if there is too much management uncertainty, or especially for anticipated effect, this is not commensurate with company's skill, expect, and resources, then they can provide just qualitative information without quantitative information. And even when company provide quantitative information, if additional qualitative information could be helpful, then they can do that too. And the last relief there mentioned is part of two proportional mechanisms we are using. Next, please. So for anticipated financial effect, basically we have a two proportionate mechanism to help preparer. And these two mechanisms of proportionate mechanism can be applied to other issues. But here, for anticipated financial effect, both proportional mechanisms work. The first one is the use of all reasonable support and supportable information available to the company or reporting entity without undue cost and effort. So this first proportionate mechanism doesn't give any exemption for the company not to report these effects. But basically what it's saying is we can do as far as you can do at best. So, but you have to use all reasonable and supporting information available. So if you do not use the supporting information available, then it's not quite right. But we are not asking undue cost and effort to make this report. That's first mechanism for proportionate perspective. And the second mechanism is, as I just said, the user approach is commensurate with the reporting entities of available skills, capability, and resources. Right. Next, please. And to help the preparer to use to understand this important part of disclosure on current and anticipated financial effect, and we are providing education material in webinar format. So if you see that webinar recorded, it has two parts, and it has all these detailed explanation of what they mean. So please use them. Very helpful. I really liked it. Next, please. For climate resilience, basically it means how the company can how can reply or take action against climate-related change, development, uncertainty. So we have to provide some kind of assessment on resilience, and then we have to provide a scenario analysis. Then to the users, to help users to understand your scenario analysis, you have to provide input key assumption used in your scenario analysis. Next, please. So in the scenario analysis, basically company use it when reporting their climate resilience. But scenario analysis also is not specified in our standard. So you can pick your own scenario analysis, probably using TCP material. And also when you have a scenario analysis to explain your resilience, typically the starting points are climate scenario provided by some other institution specialized in this area, like international climate change study organization, and so on. So all different, actually in the finance sector, they have their own climate scenario provided for central bank and so on. So you can use this expert group's climate scenario, and based on those climate scenario, you can apply your own analysis to explain what kind of resilience you have. And again, there, you can see the two proportional mechanisms are mentioned because you can use them for that. Next, please. So here there is a slide about commensurate approach to scenario analysis. So these three phase or levels of progression is in TCFD, and is originated by TCFD. So our application guidance, not our standard, our S2 standard, draw on a range of practice outlined in document by TCFD, and in those documents they explain three levels of progression. So you can use their additional information for your own disclosure. Okay, next, please. Now, as explained before, there are three types of scope, scope 1, 2, and 3. So I'll skip that because it was explained already. But okay, so again, you saw this 15 category in the presentation of Professor in the first section. So I'll skip that. And for category 15 of scope 3, we have the investment category. And especially, we call it finance emission. So in S2, we have only 3 business activity to be covered. And one is asset management. And then we have commercial banks and insurance. So in these 3 areas of finance emission, actually, we are asking more detailed information related to GHG emission, like disaggregation by asset types and so on. So for finance emission in these 3 major the finance activity should have additional disclosure other than common metrics related to scope 3 GHG emission. And one thing we did recently to make clear outside these 3 finance business, finance related business, we are not requiring a finance emission. For example, so-called facilitated emission is not required. And also the insurance writing, insurance and reinsurance writing and related activities are not required for finance emission and so on. And derivative related business are also not required for the finance emission. So it was mentioned a little bit in original publication, but it wasn't clear. That's why recently we made we are making amendment. We are not finalized. We are in the process of making final amendment related to those finance emission outside these 3: asset management, commercial bank, and insurance activity. Next, please. So here we have more detailed relief related to scope 3 emission because it's really a difficult area to make a disclosure. So for example, first year, you heard that scope 3 emission is not required. And also, some company have different reporting cycle, different accounting cycle. Like in Korea, the typical reporting cycle is January to December. In Japan, it's from April to March. So when different company has different reporting cycle, and when you have to report for other company with different reporting cycle, our standard allow to use information with different reporting cycle, but it should have 12 months. We cannot use like 6 months contents there. So it should be same 1 year period, but starting and ending cycle could be different. And then the third one is proportional mechanism, I just said. And we do have some guidance to help you for scope 3 measurement. Next, please. So definitely, even with scope 3, we prefer to have direct measurement, primary data, more granular data, and verified information. But in reality, it's not easy to get those information. So we say it's okay to use estimation for scope 3. And even for scope 1 and 2 GHG emission, many people believe that they are directly measured, but in reality, it's not. If you consider scope 2, we are using estimation. And even for scope 1, you have to use sometimes estimate. So, even scope 1 and 2, not every numbers are based on direct measurement. And in scope 3, it's more true that, you have to use estimation. The issue is how sophisticated estimation method we have to use, you can use or not. And also, secondary data is typical, and also less granular data, not verified, typical data or information you can get, but it's okay. Just consider why ISSB standard S2 requires scope 3 measurement. It's not because you can control the scope 3 emission in upstream or downstream, or you are fully responsible for their emission for policy purpose. The reason why we ask for scope 3 emission number for your own reporting is risk exposure issue. So when you have risk exposure to climate change or emission number happening in suppliers or your buyer, then you have to take into account those risks for your plan. So, for example, you are selling typical gas-based vehicle, the traditional vehicle. If the market move to EV, electric vehicle, you lose market. So, so maybe the emission you are creating through your users, drivers, actual user of your vehicle, gas-based vehicle, that is a risk. If your supplier has trouble to provide their own, goods and service to us because of their regulation risk, then you are in trouble. So the main focus on our side, asking for scope 3 numbers, is in terms of risk exposure. That's our main purpose. It's not an issue of control or responsibility per se. That's our perspective of financial materiality. Next, please. Now let's touch on industry-specific requirement. So S1 in general requirement asks for risk-specific disclosure if there are in any sustainability-related risk and opportunity. In climate change, for sure, in the S2, we say the company have to provide industry-specific disclosure if they are financially mature. But it could be different for different industry. So that's why we have a ISSB standard-based industry-specific sustainability-related requirement in appendix. But they are not part of standard required. They are illustrative example now. We may make it part of standard in the future, but now they are illustrative example. So definitely it'll be nice to use those content in appendix when you meet the requirement of industry-specific disclosure for climate change. And the good thing is basically you can reduce the burden of finding industry-specific requirement using those illustrative example. So you can focus on the most relevant information. And the finance emission of 3 finance activity I mentioned, asset management and commercial bank and insurance, has this industry-specific requirement, but that's not, that is part of requirement. So we think the finance emission is important. So finance emission related detailed information is part of required standard. Thank you. Next, please. Now let's talk about the last element of 4 pillars, targets. So the preparer have to report characteristics of each target and how the company review each target. And also they have to report their progress or their performance against each target. And there, you can report additional disclosure related to company growth and net GHG emission target. For common metrics, we are asking gross GHG emission because we want to see the whole, the gross number. But in setting the target, you can have gross and net emission target. It's up to you. Next, please. One more thing I'd like to emphasize again before we move on to question is, as I said, in setting the target, it would be nice to use national NDC and so on, but the preparer is not required to specific the target setting framework for our reporting purpose. Yeah, I'll stop there. Yeah. Can I
Yes.
serve to answer the question now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dayong Paik, for this presentation. We receive a lot of questions, and I will start with some general questions for you and also Komori-san, and also Professor Shirai may want to respond. So there is a first question. What are the main reasons listed by countries to justify why they cannot adopt ISSB standards, and what can we do about it?
Can I go first?
Sure, please go ahead.
So there are several variations of each jurisdictional position right now. So as Hiroshi mentioned, Japan announced their Japanese version of sustainability standard, ISSB standard, which is functionally aligned with our standard. Meaning it's just same, it's just full adoption. But in Korean case, we created Korean standard called Korean Sustainability Standard Board standard. And we haven't finalized, probably we finalize in the first half of this year, probably next month or the following months. But we are not taking full adoption because we have only climate-related disclosure required. Non-climate disclosures are not required now. It could be part of voluntary disclosure. If the company used voluntarily report like social issue or nature-related disclosure, they have to follow S2 framework, 4-pillar approach, but it's not part of mandatory requirement. And also they took some other carving out. So the main reason the Korea decided to have kind of partial, almost full, but not full standard setting approaches, probably because of the industry strong pushback, saying that they are not ready and they have to make a lot of investment, especially infrastructure, to collect information. And also they are also concerned about legal liability, because if they provide some information which turn out to be untrue in the future, they may have some challenge from users and some other public groups and so on. So they think they need more time to be prepared, provide reliable and assurable information to the market. So this kind of concern was strongly appealed to the regulator, and that's why they decided to have a slow start without non-climate contents there. So because Australia took the similar approach and so on. So in general, most of the Asian country or the country in other continent as well took the full approach, but there are several countries which are having only climate first now. And as I said, typical example are Australia and Korea, and there are some more. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Komori-san, do you want to add anything?
I don't think so, but this is important discussion. So this is a good question to me. That each jurisdiction has its own, say, history, culture, and the size of the capital markets, and maybe when we say sustainability topics, it varies very much at each country level. So therefore, as Diane said, that company jurisdiction can choose, for example, that S2 only or S2 first or something like that. So therefore, it's completely up to each market, I would say. And of course, ideally, investors, from the investor's point of view, sustainability topics differs very much and covers many things, not only climate, but also, say, bees or even, say, cybersecurity or AI governance or something like that. So there is no limit of sustainability topics. So therefore, say each regulator or each standard setter can make own decision which approach would be most effective for them. As a first question, it takes long and uses very much big volume of human resources and some energy or something like that. So therefore, it's up to each jurisdiction's character or specification. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may, can I come back? I want to touch on capacity building. So when they prepare say they need time, it has definitely the infrastructure issue, but it also has a critical human resource issue. So that's why we need a capacity building for preparer side as well as a regulator side. So they need time to train them internally. So that's why any capacity building program provided by the local government provided with like MDB. For example, World Bank has an agreement with ISSB to help global capacity building. And definitely ADB or ADBI can have a capacity building program to help those Asian countries to be ready, to raise their awareness and to make them feel comfortable. They can do it because, sometimes they are so scared when they read the standard. But if you can understand step by step, they can see they are doable over the year. So that's why capacity building is critical. So I think, so that's why there are a lot of room, MDB like ADB and ADBI can help the whole landscape for sure.
Thank you. Yes, there is Professor Shirai. Would you like to add something?
Actually, I have a question to two board members. So when I talk with a lot of Asian financial regulators, what's happened is that actually many countries already started to prepare their own country-specific sustainability standard indicators, very diverse. So they already established it in many countries. So then ISSB come. So how to put, integrate ISSB into their existing country-specific indicator and metrics is one challenge. In the case of Japan, I think good thing is that they require a company to disclose ISSB information kind of separately in this their financial statement. So, for example, I understand ISSB disclosure very much. So I like to see each country disclose in the same format. But already many countries have their own sustainability, including climate. So some country kind of not fully adapting and kind of embedded, so I think this is one challenge, so ISSB disclosure is there, but how to integrate and, it looks like each country is doing separately. So that is, I think, one challenge from investors' point of view. Can you reply to me? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Shirai. Yeah, another good question in terms of a challenge for, say, not only companies, but also regulators, standard setters at each company at each country level. So one thing as a big precondition of our S1 and S2, this is for investors as a users of disclosure made by companies. So therefore, how much each jurisdiction can add something specific to its own, say, jurisdiction, depends on the needs of investor side.
Yeah.
So so that's why I skipped my slide 26. I think that we've taken the same definition of materiality from our IFRS accounting standards, which say companies need to avoid, say, such as misstating or something like that, which includes obscuring. So as a nature of companies worldwide, companies always want to disclose as much as possible. They can. But reversely, investors are very busy people, and then but they are professional of analyzing and gathering the information by themselves. So therefore, they always like to look at the data which are really material, which would affect the company's, say, financial information or business model in short term, mid term, long term. So that's why I emphasize the importance of a definition of a materiality by companies themselves. And also, it should be agreed with investors.
Yeah.
Otherwise, disclosure would be just a waste of time because it is too much obscure, much more than investors need.
Yes.
So so in that sense, to your question, whether how much each jurisdiction can add something on a building block approach, it depends on the needs of investors in the end.
Yeah.
So that was a big discussion in a Japanese process of, say, Japanese standard, such using the Japanese own ministry decided that there is one regulation of set by Ministry of Environment, which is anti-global law or something. So, but that is not sufficient to the investor's point of view in a sense. So, but the discussion is still ongoing right now. Yeah. So it's not easy, as you say. So it takes time. But we learn much. Such a S1, S2 is not just a simple solution at all. It takes time for each jurisdiction companies to get accustomed to, and the investors need. So so we are very much would like to say continue this type of engagement and the discussion with each level, each jurisdiction level, even though they have adopted our S1 and S2. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Okay, I can put it in my own word. To simply put, I see this issue as a difference between policy or impact-driven disclosure versus financial mutually perspective-driven disclosure. So if you are an investor, you don't need to pay too much attention for those information required by Ministry of Environment with policy orientation or impact orientation. Because before, they didn't have other information. That's why they have to use jurisdictional information oriented for policy purpose. But now hopefully, within several years, most Asian countries will have ISSB-based disclosure. So they can focus on those comparable and consistent information across the region. So I think that's kind of the feature we are expecting to have.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question. So I confirm that ADB use some technical assistance to help countries adopting the standard. But if a country wants to get a country-specific training on ISSB standard, what should this country do? Should it contact directly multilateral development banks like ADB, or can the country also contact directly IFRS Foundation?
ISSB cannot provide individual training for particular country because there are too many.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we organize some regional events through regional office. So it's up to regional office like Frankfurt, Montreal, Beijing, Tokyo, and so on. But we are more working on global training partner, capacity building partner.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is so-called SSE, Sustainable Stock Exchange. So they do have the training program, typically online program in different regions. Recently, I think they had it in Vietnam and also some other country and so on. Singapore, I think so. So, and Philippines too, actually. The one I saw is the Philippine one. So I think they are very active, and their seminar is typically organized by SSE with one of our staff helping them. So you can contact SSC for more regional, more country level event, and I mean there could be other organization helping us. So I'm not sure when World Bank program will start, but sooner or later they will start, and then you can contact them. And if ADB has planned to have that kind of capacity building program, then definitely ADB will be like one of the right channel to contact to create that kind of event. Yeah, I think these are kind of several channels. We can have this one. And the other one is using our board member like Hiroshi and me. So if you want to have some event in Japan and Korea, you can contact us. Then each board member can help. Actually, that's part of our job. We are having have been providing that kind of seminar in each country for last almost 3 years. So, if you do have board members there, it's nice to do that. If you don't have, if your country do not have any board member, then maybe you can contact us too, because and as told, because now we have 3 Asian board members. Yeah.
Thank you. There was an interesting question still related to the overall adoption. Someone asked, what is the advantage of adopting the ISSB standard if a country is dominated by, if the country has a market dominated by oil industry, financed by foreign investors? So, yeah, why such a country should consider to adopt ISSB standard?
Yeah, the answer is simple that in order to in order to if you are the say regulator in a market, if you want to make your country's influential, important industry or company be appropriately evaluated or invested by global say, investors or financial institutions or some others, you need to make a good disclosure in terms of risks and opportunity. So that's why many jurisdictions now say hurrying up to adopt or something put on our S1 and S2 as a global standard. So whether say investors are global or local, I think that the disclosure is already universally global wherever you are. So therefore, that's why you need to adopt our S1 and S2 for your own economy, for your own, I mean, a country's, say, wealth for the future generation or something like that. That's what we have. We always have in image, in our mind.
Yeah. I have two other questions, a bit more detailed. So you shared with us that the definition of materiality can come from companies, but someone asked, are there any standard parameters or benchmarks to determine what is really material?
Oh, yes, thank you. Another good question and a difficult question. It's easy for us to say you need to define your own materiality definition, but it's not easy at all.
Yes.
So therefore, we issued the educational material on, say, materiality and financial impact and impact materiality, something like that, on covering the single materiality, double materiality for the company in November last year. So first, please read that document. Yeah, I'm sure that that is one of the best educational materials we issued in the past. Yeah, for the company.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And there were also a couple of questions on where S1 and S2 analysis should be reported. Should it be reported in the financial statement, a separate sustainability report, another report? Yeah, there were several questions about that, so I thought it would be good to clarify it.
Being a accounting professor for more than 30 years, there is confusion, for example, between financial statement and financial report. So basically, in different countries, they have different names of general purpose financial report, and typical name would be annual report. So annual report is typical example of general purpose financial report. And within that general purpose financial report, there's a financial statement. And typically there are 5 parts: income statement or financial performance statement, owner's balance sheet or called financial statement of position, and cash flow, and statement on owner's equity. And so there are 4 tables, and then we have a note. So financial statement is 5 parts, but there are other content in annual report other than financial statement. So what we are asking is put the disclosure based on our standard in annual report or in other general financial general purpose financial report, not in financial statement themselves. Because financial statement, that's a territory of accounting standard. So anything goes into financial statement, including footnote, should follow accounting standard, I mean, they could use IFRS accounting standard, or they could have their own country accounting standard. But anyway, a financial statement is not the area we want to put our contents there. Outside the financial, but inside the financial, general purpose financial report. That's the place we want to put. So one example in management commentary, if the company has management commentary required or voluntarily used, then they can put our content in management commentary. But also it's not required, it's part of their choices. So that's kind of general direction we say. We said in our standard in S1, we say we don't specify where to put our content inside the general purpose financial reports, but it should be there outside financial statement, but inside the general purpose financial reports.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very clear. Maybe to close this first day session, I have an open question for you and also Professor Shirai from one of the participants who is asking, given the growing anti-ESG sentiment in some countries, how do you foresee the adoption globally, the adoption of the ISSB standard globally? What are your perspectives, your future perspectives?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So due to the reports on media, it seems that there will be a big headwind for people for sustainability. But in reality, as I said, that simplification, streamlining of ESRS would be very beneficial for, say, EU companies, because that EU is now approaching to a global standard, global baseline, IFRS S1 to omitting the too much, say, the disclosure data point, in a sense. So that would be one thing. And also in the US, yeah, everybody knows that what is going on currently in that country. But apart from the federal legal requirement, there are 5 big states in the United States which will say go ahead towards S1 and S2 in future. One is California, state of California, and New York, state of New York, and New Jersey, and Illinois, and Colorado. So those are the 5 states. And also, particularly in case of California state of law, they will affect not only the companies which have headquarters in California, but also the companies which have big businesses and to a certain number of threshold employees in California, they also affected as well. So therefore, that would be a very, say, influential, say, mandatory requirement for the U.S. companies to disclose, to keep disclosure of sustainability risks and opportunity as they are doing now. So we can't be too much optimistic right now, but because things seems to be very fluctuating, and sometimes the pendulum swings very much like that. So, but as far as we know, we are now having a kind of big, I mean, a hope towards the future on a sustainability, say, standard landscape. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Taeyong Paik, do you want to add on this? And then Professor Shirai?
Sure. Yeah, definitely there are 2 ways to use our standard. One is a mandatory requirement set by the regulator. So it depends on political situation, or what kind of speed and timeline they are going to take. So maybe current situation may a little bit delay the pace, but we do not observe any serious change in Asian country after this political situation globally, global world. So we don't see much effect on mandatory side as well. And also voluntary use is still there because basically we are asking for transparency and accountability related sustainability issue, including climate change efforts. So the market pressure is there. So if you want to get really global, especially global investors fund in your company, and also if you want to have reduce risk premium on your cost of capital, definitely we have to show up. You are doing well against all this disaster coming in more serious way. And every day we can see it's getting worse and gets worse. So definitely they have to be ready. So the direction of travel doesn't change. Maybe a little bit of delay temporarily, but in the long run, it'll be good way. So that's why the preparer, especially company, have to ready for it because it takes time to be ready, not just for disclosure, but also to change your management and your business model and your business strategy in your environment. So that's why the most important thing is the awareness of preparer. It's their management issue. It's not compliance issue at all. So that essence doesn't change. Yeah, maybe that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much, Professor Shirai.
Yes, so we at ADBI communicating with Southeast Asia, especially Southeast Asia and East Asia. And I think, from our experiences, there's no slowdown in terms of their plan to implement ISSB disclosure. So I was quite surprised. I thought there would be some impact, but when we had this roundtable last month, no change. So in that sense, it's encouraging. And also, Komori-san said, and also explained, I look at California's detailed disclosure, and they're actually more active in the sense that they ask more information about carbon market. So recently, New York, they just proposed this draft. So about half of the states, very environment conscious. So in any case, this climate issue will stay there. And we really need to allocate money to these decarbonization and various environment issue. Everybody knows it. And especially emerging and developing countries, because they need to depend on foreign capital. So global disclosure is the must. If they have a too specific, country-specific disclosure, it's very difficult for global investors to compare. So I just want to emphasize, as two board members mentioned, so this S1, S2, it will be good to place in annual report. But outside of financial statement, I think that is very important. And I see a lot of countries is doing their own ESG sustainability disclosure. That is good, but I think S1 and S2 are really created from the very strong demand from investors. So I think this S1, understanding S1 and S2 is really important. And so putting to the annual report is quite important. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Shirai. So this is the end of the first day. Thank you very much to all our presenters and our participants. We hope you enjoyed this first part. Tomorrow we will dig into the steps that need to be taken for adoption. So see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Tokyo time for the second part of this online training. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Agnes, Professor Shirai.